Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's ISC2 webinar. Today, once again, I have the great pleasure of hosting Steve Piper, who's the founder and CEO of CyberEdge Group, as you all know, that does the cyber defense report every year for us. But he's also the editor-in-chief of Security Buzz, but more on that towards the end of today's session. We're going to be unpacking strategies for dealing with the cybersecurity skills shortage. It's not just about hiring and finding and onboarding talent, but it's also about upskilling the talent and finding talent from new and interesting places to bring into the profession. Steve, welcome back. Always good to have you on with your new equipment too, and your new certificate hanging up behind you.
No more geeky headphones. I actually invested in a nice webinar microphone. So super excited.
Let's make good use of it, and let me turn things over to you, sir, to take us through the material.
All right, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining our webinar. First webinar of the year. I'm going to be doing a total of 10 this year, which I'm super excited about and very grateful to ISC2. This webinar is Bridging the Gap, Strategies to Overcome the Cybersecurity Skills Shortage. Okay. Now, for those of you who are hiring managers, you feel the pain, and Brendan and I both recognize your pain. It is really hard to find good, qualified skill security personnel. So in the way of an agenda, I'm going to start out and I'm going to give you some industry statistics to chew on, primarily from our annual cyber threat defense report, which we're so grateful to ISC2 have as a sustaining sponsor year after year. Then I want to talk about creative ways to recruit and retain IT security talent. There's the expression in sales, it's so much cheaper to keep a customer than it is to get a customer. I'd say the same thing holds true. It's much cheaper to retain IT security talent than it is to recruit. So don't just focus on recruiting. Let's talk about retaining as well. Then we're going to shift gears and talk about some security tech and services. So specific tech and services that enable you to accomplish more with fewer people. In other words, work smarter rather than work harder. And then I'm going to summarize everything and develop an action plan. I'm hoping that you're going to pick up some useful tips and tricks in this webinar, but I want you to make a plan. What's the expression? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. I want you to pick up some ideas here and develop an action plan. Let's look at some of the stats out there, especially from our 2024 Cyber Threat Defense Report. And I'm going to provide a few other stats from some third parties when we talk about the value of training and certification. But in terms of statistics about how bad the shortage is, these are coming from our annual CDR, the Cyber Threat Defense Report. Most of you are familiar because most of you have seen my webinars before. Every November, we do a 27-question online survey, and the survey respondents are IT security people just like you, decision makers and practitioners. The respondents are not from small companies. They're from companies with 500 or more employees, and it's a really nice cross-section of small to medium enterprises, mid-sized enterprise, and very large multinational organizations. The survey is designed to assess your organization's security posture, perceptions of threat and challenges of the day, where you're making in your investments, how are you embracing industry standard practices and strategies. Later this year, I believe it's going to be April 16th, we're going to be talking about the findings of our 2025 CDR. But in gratitude for you spending your time with me over this hour, I actually am going to give you a sneak peek at a couple of interesting stats before the report is published on April 15th of this year. So let's look at the stats over the last 7 years. So this chart is from our 2024 Cyber Threat Defense Report. Back in 2018, it was around 81% of organizations were experiencing a shortage of IT security talent. It peaked right around the pandemic to 87%, and it's only crept back to 86%. And moving forward, we're going to ask this question on a 3-year cycle because the range of stats is pretty close. So we're going take this question and ask a new question, which you'll see on April 15th. But it's bad. Okay. So however you want to slice it, 7 out of 8 organizations are experiencing a shortage in IT security talent. Where? Good question. So we asked that in 23 and 24. Where are you seeing a backlog of IT security job roles? Top of the list in dark blue is 2024. Light blue is 2023. IT security administrators. Okay. These are the folks that are responsible for installing and configuring and maintaining your IT security infrastructure. So 35% of organizations are experiencing a shortage there. Then your frontline people, your IT security analysts, operators, incident responders, those men and women that serve in the SOC, in the Security Operations Center, almost a third of organizations are experiencing a backlog there, as well as IT security architects and engineers, IT security compliance auditors, DevSecOps engineers, risk fraud analysts, application security testers, and more. So we know there's a shortage, and we know it is a significant challenge. Okay. Now, one of the questions, in fact, this is one of my favorite questions that we ask year after year after year in our CDR, scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being highest. Rate how each of the following inhibit your organization from adequately defending itself against cyber threats. So in other words, what is standing in the way? We have almost a two-way tie in last year's CDR between low security awareness among employees and lack of skilled personnel. More evidence that this is a very big obstacle. Okay, it's not just about stressing out your workforce because they're spread very thin. It is also putting your organization at risk because you have fewer resources to lock down your attack surface to ensure your threat detection defenses are fully optimized. All right, so now we've seen some pretty scary stats. Let's talk about strategies. We're going to talk about recruiting strategies first and then retaining strategies second. So creative ways to recruit new talent. And I'm really hopeful that I'll present some new ideas for you that you hadn't considered. One is, if you think about your entire IT department, there are some areas of the IT department that are easier to hire than security. So what I would recommend, and most organizations have recruiters that work in the HR department, okay? Or the HR department works with external recruiters. But talk to your HR counterparts. Ask them, hey, how would you evaluate or assess the cost to recruit IT security personnel versus other personnel in the IT department? Now, why would you want to do this? The reason why you want to do this is it's the law of supply and demand, right? Okay, there's fewer supply, there's greater demand. So when you have this backlog and it's more expensive to recruit, you can use that potentially to justify higher salaries, higher bonuses, or more stock options or other incentives. Okay. Now, another suggestion I have is think about promoting from within. You may find some really talented personnel, maybe some great help desk personnel that you think would be mighty fine security analysts. They've been with the company for a few years. They have excellent track records. Now, you don't want to take off your peers and other IT roles, but everyone works for the same company. Everybody wants that company to succeed. So, discuss with your CIO, for example, and maybe think about a program for recruiting other IT personnel from non-security teams for the benefit of the security team, especially those departments that are easiest to backfill. Okay, that could be a nice way to recruit. I would also recommend launching an IT security mentor program. So you publish this for the entire IT department. I guess you could publish it company-wide, but if you have an existing employee that may want to branch or expand their career, into security, transition into security. Maybe you meet with a mentor. Maybe there's a day where you shadow an IT security administrator, you shadow an IT security analyst or incident responder, so that they can see what it's like, before they take the plunge and potentially throw their hat in the ring when they see an IT security wreck come up. Compensate IT security staff members, and you could do this for company wide. I worked for a company where this was very successful, where any employee in the entire company, if they referred someone, if there was a job on the website and they referred someone they know to the hiring manager, they would be compensated with X number of dollars. Now, I would recommend make it meaningful. Don't make it $100 or $300 or whatever. Let's make it at least $1,000. Or if it's a really hard to find role, finding a really, really qualified security architect, for example, can be a needle in the haystack. So for the harder to find roles, maybe you increase the incentive a little bit. And then you pay the referring employee a bonus after the newly hired employee that they referred has been with the company after you figured out 6 months, I think is what we did with my previous employer. That seemed to work pretty well. Or it could be after a year, whatever makes sense to you and your colleagues. Now, I'm going to spend some time on this last bullet. I am a proud CISSP. Okay. In my career, I've had more than a dozen technical certifications. I actually started out as a systems engineer working in data centers before I joined the dark side of the force in marketing. And I've really spent the bulk of my career either working for technology vendors and product marketing, product management, head of marketing roles, or for the last 12 years, being the founder and CEO of CyberEdge, where we're a cybersecurity marketing firm. But over the course of my 30-year career, I've had more than a dozen, technical certifications, like from Microsoft and Novell, if anybody remembers what NetWare is, from Dell and Cisco and all these different Citrix. I was among the first 100 employees at Citrix. I was Citrix certified. I was SourceFire certified. Now, the only certification I have left today is my CISSP. And I've been a CISSP since 2008. And I think it's just a tremendous certification. Use IT security training and certification as a recruiting incentive. Okay. Now you can decide that, you join the company, and then after you've been here for 3 months, 6 months, then we'll enroll you in whatever training and certification program is relevant to your specific role in the security department. But you are committing to remaining at the company for at least 1 year after the completion of your certification. Okay, it's optional. You don't have to do that, but I think it's appropriate because good training and certification is not cheap. Investing in your resources is not cheap, and having a commitment that once you certify them, that they're not going to turn around 3 weeks later and try to find a better paying job elsewhere now that they have this certification. I think having that at least a year commitment is appropriate. Now, more on training. A few years ago, Amazon and Gallup teamed up, and they did this research report, the American Upskilling Study, Empowering Workers for the Jobs of Tomorrow. This has nothing to do with cybersecurity, nothing to do with IT, but there's a couple of interesting stats that really ring true to me. 48% of American workers would switch to a new job if offered skills, training, and opportunities. Okay, so maybe you can stand out from a recruiting perspective by offering training and certification as a recruiting incentive. The other stat that I found interesting was 65% of workers believe employer-provided upskilling is very important when evaluating a potential new job. Okay, so somebody that work for a company where they're going to invest in you, where you can grow with that company, I think is very important. Great things to consider from a recruiting perspective. Years ago, CNBC and SurveyMonkey did a survey, and among the questions they asked is, what is the one change that would most improve your job satisfaction. Again, nothing to do with IT, okay? Just in general. And there's different color codings based on the age responses. But what you can see is first place across all the different age brackets, more training or learning opportunities. That was more important to the respondents than more paid time off, more flexible schedule, a shorter commute, increased parental leave, childcare, yada, yada, yada. It was the number one thing that improves job satisfaction. Okay. Now, in 2023, we asked a question about which what are the benefits of achieving professional certification in IT security. And what we learned was there were lots of benefits for that lead to employee satisfaction. Top of the list, expanded knowledge of my chosen profession. Number two, increased credibility and respect. Number three, here we go, improved job satisfaction. Next, increased opportunities for employment or advancement. And then at the bottom of the list, it's not about the Benjamins. It's not about, certainly the comp is there. 36% of the people said that that's a significant motivation, okay? But it's about improving job satisfaction and all these other things. Lots of benefits to training and certification. Now, I mentioned up front, we are going to be announcing our 12th annual Cyber Threat Defense Report for 2025 on April 15th. This is a sneak peek. I've got a couple sneak peeks in there. So sneak peek here. We asked a brand new question in this year's survey for 2025 about cyber demand for specialized cybersecurity professional certifications. Now, CISSP is a broad, covers a broad range. I almost think of it as an umbrella certification that covers so many different domains. Heck, I even learned back in the day, I don't know if they're still doing it today, but the different types of fire extinguishers and how to design your parking lot so that you have light coverage. I mean, it was just really, really fascinating. But there are also specialty trainings and certifications. Top of the list for this year's CDR, security management, followed by security and engineering. And then for those respondents that are pretty new to security, entry-level security fundamentals is helpful to them, followed by cloud security, advanced security practices, security architecture, security admin, GRC, and SDLC. So keep in mind, when you offer training, as a recruiting tool, or we're going to shift gears in just a moment and talk about retention, it doesn't need to be all in for a large certification like CISSP. It could maybe start out as something more granular, something more specialized based on their specific job role. Okay? Now, we talked a lot about recruiting and strategies to recruit talent. I would say it's just as important, if not even more important, to implement strategies to retain your existing security talent, because the less turnover you have, then the more time you need to spend on backfilling. Okay, so use IT security training and certification as a retention incentive. And again, I would recommend having some sort of commitment, preferably a contractual commitment rather than just a handshake agreement. Requires 1 year minimum continued employment commitment. Make professional development a priority. I once worked for a company where we had quarterly bonuses, okay? And at least one of the quarters in the calendar year, one of the MBOs, the management by objective, one of those quarterly goals was tied to professional development. And if you didn't attend a professional development course by the fourth quarter of the year, then your Q4 bonus would be impacted. Make professional development part of your company's culture, or at least of your department's culture, because we just saw how important training and certification are for job satisfaction. Okay, so that is a great way to retain existing talent. I'm a big fan, and this third bullet here obviously has nothing to do with security, but I'm a big fan of these anonymous employee satisfaction surveys. I worked for a company years ago. I forget what you call it. I think the nickname was like a 360 survey, where the people that work for you evaluate you, your peers evaluate you, your superiors evaluate you, so that you get kind of a 360 view of how you're evaluated. Now, this can also relate to satisfaction. Okay. Now, when you are evaluated, you want to make sure respond so that you can communicate your satisfaction in your organization. If you don't ask your employees if they're satisfied, you'll never know if there's a growing concern inside the organization. Knowing is better than not knowing. Okay. Even if you, uh, I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso, and I remember one of the episodes. He had this suggestion box in the locker room of his soccer team, where anybody could go and drop suggestions in the suggestion box. Don't have to do a suggestion box. I mean, although you could, but periodically, maybe once per year, just do an employee satisfaction survey, and potentially make it anonymous. That way, people can be very honest about concerns that they have in the organization without any potential fear of retribution. And then finally, stand out from the competition. And this really goes for recruiting and retaining as well. But consider work schedule flexibility. Consider work from home flexibility. Now, as the pandemic has wind down, a lot of organizations are mandating employees to go back in the office, and that's fine. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Okay. Maybe one day a week that you choose, you get to work from home. I'm a big fan of these quarterly team building offsites. Everyone go bowling. Everyone do one of those escape rooms, or a confidence course, where you do rope climbing or whatever it is, team building stuff. At least annually, but you could do those quarterly, or at least quarterly offsites where you can interact, with your colleagues, outside of the office. And then special employee recognitions. This can be very powerful. Everybody wants to be recognized for their achievements. Okay, and I worked for a company once where we called them. I think it started out as attaboys, and then it evolved into attapersons. And anyone could nominate someone for an attaperson award, and they would describe what that person did, which was above and beyond the call of duty. I worked for a company once where in the department we had at our QBRs, our quarterly business review meetings, we had Compass Awards, and I got one quarter, and I still have it today, where you open up the box and inside is a compass, and the metaphor here is you are helping to set the direction for your department. But whatever it is, even if they're just certificates or Starbucks rewards or whatever it is, people appreciate being recognized for their achievements. And when they're recognized, they feel that they're being recognized. They're much likelier to be happy and much likelier to leave, or less likely to leave. You guys know what I'm saying. All right. Next, let's talk about security technologies and services to accomplish more with fewer people. In other words, ways that you can work smarter rather than work harder. I'm a very big fan of SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response. These are tools that allow you to automate mundane processes, such as opening a ticket for a potential security incident that needs to be investigated, or doing forensics on a particular cyber attack. Or there's lots of different use cases for SOAR. Tip, threat intelligence platforms. Think of that as the plumbing for threat intelligence. Most organizations, certainly every threat detection tool that you come with certainly comes with intelligence, and vulnerability management tools. They come with intelligence based on checks or plugins about vulnerabilities. But there's third-party intelligence out there. Some of it is open source. Most of it, I'd say most of the good stuff is subscription based. But when you license this third-party intelligence, you need to find ways to have that intelligence feed into your existing infrastructure, your network security tools, your endpoint security tools, your security operations tools. So threat intelligence platforms is that plumbing that allows you to automate a lot of that. But it also makes it easier for incident responders to investigate threats because they can look up information about cyber adversaries, for example. So people are working more efficiently. Um, I've done a webinar last year, and by the way, you can go to ISC2's Bright Talk channel. If you put in my name, you're going to see more than a dozen webinar recordings. Brandon and I did one, I think it was last year, about cyber exposure, the evolution from vulnerability management to cyber exposure management, also known as risk-based vulnerability management. Managing your attack surface is one of the most challenging things, and certainly we're going to talk about that on April 16th when I return to talk about our 2025 Cyber Threat Defense Report. But reducing your attack surface by uncovering vulnerabilities and patching them is always a challenge. We have new ways to prioritize vulnerabilities to be patched, not just based on the severity score, the CVSS score, okay, but also based on whether there's malware in the wild to exploit those unpatched vulnerabilities. If there's not, then maybe give that a lower priority. And there's other factors as well. So if you're just using traditional vulnerability management solutions, think again. It's time to grow up. It's time to evolve to risk-based vulnerability management, cyber exposure management, whatever you want to call it. But don't just prioritize based on CVSS score alone. Cloud-based everything. Maybe next time I talk about this topic, I'll ditch that bullet because kind of most things these days are cloud-based. But the fewer on-prem servers and appliances and things that you need to maintain and patch and keep up to date, certainly that allows you to be more efficient. And then finally, embrace solutions that dramatically decrease your risk of cyber attacks. Brandon and I have talked in the past about zero trust. That's actually going to be the next topic for next month's webinar on, I think it's March 19th. Yes, March 19th. And again, go to the Bright Talk channel for ISC2, and you can register for 9 more webinars if you want that I'll be presenting with Brandon for the remainder of this year. But zero trust is a game changer, okay? Embracing things like two-factor, multi-factor authentication and micro-segmentation and other technologies as well. This is a way to dramatically reduce your attack surface and mitigate the risk of cyber attacks. AI-based kind of everything, but especially threat detection platforms. Brandon and I did a webinar last year on AI, and we talked about who has the upper hand. And of course, the answer is both. The good guys and the bad guys both are embracing AI in different ways. But from a good guy perspective, security vendors are very successful these days at optimizing their threat detection algorithms, using machine learning and artificial intelligence to detect unknown threats, and not only unknown threats targeting known vulnerabilities, but unknown threats targeting unknown vulnerabilities, zero-day vulnerabilities, zero-day attacks. So our threat detection platforms, threat prevention platforms are more sophisticated than ever. So network detection and response, and extended detection and response, endpoint detection and response, and so on. And then phishing awareness solutions. I'm a really big fan of that. Back to that question from the Cyber Threat Defense Report, what is standing in the way of being successful at defending your organization against cyber attacks? Well, the number one, slightly above, the lack of skilled personnel, was low security awareness among employees. We need to do more to invest in our human firewalls. So I'm a big believer in phishing awareness solutions where you conduct simulated phishing attacks against every employee in the company. And I do believe it should be every employee, including security personnel and even the CEO of the company. Whereas if they fall for a phishing or spear phishing simulated attack, then a message pops up and educates the user on how not to fall for that. Again, I'm a big believer in that. So the more we can do to reduce our attack surface, to mitigate the risks of cyber attacks, then the fewer incidents that we're investigating, and all of these things allow us to do more with fewer resources. Now, I'm also a big fan of outsourcing to MSSPs, managed security service providers. So one of the questions that we asked in 2022, and again for our 2025 cyber threat defense report, this is the second of two sneak peeks, is we asked, which of the following security functions are you outsourcing to an MSSP? Now let's look at the chart on the left. Back in 2022, 93% of organizations were outsourcing one or more functions. Tick down just a little bit, which surprised me just a little bit, but it barely anything. And now it's 90%. Okay. So, and as I'll say again on April 16th, I want you to use the cyber threat defense report as your secret weapon to lobby for change. Okay. So what I mean by that is if your organization is not working with an MSSP and you have a skill shortage in a particular area, take this report. It's a vendor agnostic report with 1,200 survey completions. It has a very low 3% survey margin of error. Let the powers that be know, hey, 9 out of 10 organizations are outsourcing at least something to an MSSP where they have, a shortage in talent. Why aren't we? Okay. So in terms of things that you may want to outsource to an MSSP, top of the list in 2022 is the same top of the list in 2025, detecting and responding to advanced cyber threats. Some vendors are pure play MDR vendors. They are a managed security service provider. They are providing services, but some of them are specialized where they only do managed detection and response, or MDR, or most, if not virtually all MSSPs also do MDR. Next, monitoring and managing your SIM platform. Beyond that, doing the same for IDS, IPS, secure web or email gateways, web application firewalls. Firewalls are UTM, Unified Threat Management devices, managing vulnerability scans, and mitigating DDoS attacks. So there's lots of functions that you can outsource. And from my experiencing, outsourcing to an MSSP, there can be an ROI advantage, okay? In other words, for every dollar you spend with the MSSP, you save $2. But it's not always about ROI. It's about you've got a shortage in a certain area, and you need to make sure that your bases are covered. Another thing that I like to think about when working with an MSSP is you're working with an organization where they have dozens or hundreds of customers, where they are embracing best of breed technology and best of breed practices. So in other words, instead of trying to invent the wheel in-house, of coming up with ways to do threat hunting and detect these very sophisticated threats, maybe outsource that to an MSSP or an MDR vendor, because they're embracing best of breed practices with top-notch personnel, because that's all they're doing. Okay. And they're doing it for dozens or hundreds of customers. So something to think about there. All right, let's summarize here, and we are going to have lots of time for your questions. Developing your action plan. I want you to think about a lot of the tips that I gave you for recruiting personnel and retaining personnel. Develop an action plan, especially, of course, if you're a hiring manager. To summarize some of the key elements here, I want you to contemplate ways to use training and certification as a recruiting and a retention tool. One of the key takeaways from this webinar is don't just think about recruiting strategies, think about retention strategies as well, okay? Think about ways to promote talented IT personnel from within. Talk to your HR people, try to gauge, is it more costly to recruit security people than other IT people? Are there any sections or any parts of the department where it's kind of easy to find personnel, where there's not a big backlog? Launch a cybersecurity mentor program, okay? So give your organizations the opportunity to grow their careers inside your company. Okay. So sign up for spend a day with a security analyst, spend the day with a security engineer. Maybe you're a network engineer and you're thinking about getting into security engineering, spend the day. Maybe you're an application developer, but you want to branch out into DevSecOps and you want to maybe spend the day with an application security engineer. Okay. So have a mentor program, kind of like, a police ride along or an ambulance ride along. Well, how about a cybersecurity ride along? Cybersecurity professional ride along. Spend a half day, spend a day with them and learn what their day is like, to see if that might be of interest to you in, expanding your career. Launch an employee referral campaign. This is a great idea to do company-wide for all positions. But as we know, in the IT department, usually the most challenging roles to backfill are IT security people, especially those administrators and analysts. So if you can have a referral campaign that's maybe for your security department, employees that are under your domain or under the CISO's domain, or maybe it's the IT department, or maybe it is company-wide. But think about that and make it meaningful. Promote work schedule and location flexibility. Find ways to leverage security technologies, and don't forget in services, which is the next bullet, so that you can accomplish more with fewer resources. Think about where you have areas where you have a big backfill, and especially when it comes to threat hunting and detecting those advanced threats, something you might want to outsource to an MSSP. Stop pondering. Life is short. It's time to act. So please put together an action plan. Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we've got lots of time for Q&A.
No, that's great. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and put us back on camera here. A few folks have come in and said, well, where's this non-traditional talent? Where's some good places to come from? And I'll tell you, I'll recount a story that a friend of mine's father told me years ago. He worked on Wall Street in the late 80s, early 90s. And they hired for financial people, quant jocks, as they were calling them at the time. They went to the major engineering universities. They pulled chemists, physicists, because they had strong math, strong critical thinking and analytical skills, and they taught them finance. And I'm hearing a lot of career changers from completely different professions with transferable skills coming in. I just thought it was fascinating. They're hiring engineering talent and they figured they'll teach them finance. I think we're in an opportunity here, and I'd love to get your opinion, where hiring non-traditional talent, maybe they've got accounting skills. Great. They show analytics. Let's bring them into cybersecurity. I'm sure the CISO would love someone with accounting skills to help put the budget together every year, right? What are some other tangential or perhaps off the beaten path careers that you think would be beneficial to come into this profession?
I'm going to answer your question, but I want to start out with a philosophical statement. So I think it was Confucius that said, find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Okay. So I presume many, if not most people that have accounting degrees love accounting. And if they love accounting, I wouldn't try to recruit them just to try to get them to join security for the bucks. I would want them to do what you love. But on the flip side of that coin, there's many people where they have a degree in a certain area, they have their first or second job out of school, and they don't love what they do. So make sure you find people that are passionate and love what they do. With that said, certainly there's skill sets that are relevant. So for example, let's say you're a compliance auditor, okay? And you may work in the security department and you need to make sure that you are compliant with fill in the blank, PCI, HIPAA, EU GDPR, CISSP, NERC, whatever. There's dozens of compliance regs out there. So the skill set, of being an auditor outside of security may be transferable inside of security. Certainly that's an example. I think if it was me, if I was a CISO, one of the biggest jobs where first job out of school, is a help desk person. Okay. And help desk people, they join the company, they're thrilled. And after they've been there a year, 2 years, they're like, oh man, this is getting a little old. Okay. And there's often a lot of turnover there. So I think help desk people.
That was my first
interesting.
salaried job out of college, and how I got started in security was help desk. I moved into QA and testing, and it was for security products, and that was how I got into it. So, yeah, that's a great skill, and I think a lot of people also, what you can do is if you look at the exam outlines that ISC2 has, right, for the types of topics covered in the exams, be it the SSCP or the CISSP. Those are great ways to look also at your own career and say, well, am I doing security now? Maybe I am. Maybe if I'm on the help desk and I'm resetting passwords and troubleshooting network connections and stuff, hey, there's valuable security elements to that maybe you can just retool your resume a little bit, tell a different story about what it is that you're doing, right? That might be another way to attach to some of these great programs. And we had a fantastic couple of questions and comments coming from Jennifer about recommendations on sourcing, that non-traditional talent we've touched on. But another comment, which I thought was worth mentioning, is how do we go about building from kind of that mentoring to perhaps that apprenticeship path? Any recommendations on either getting management on board or maybe bootstrapping a program like that internally?
I think it'd be pretty easy to sell a mentor program. I mean, who wouldn't want to encourage people to grow their careers inside the company, stay inside the company, and allow people to just spend a day. And you don't want to burden your people, okay? And everyone's different, right? Some people would be like, no, stay away. I don't want to be a mentor. No. That maybe they're more introverted. And some people that are extroverted, like, yeah, bring it on. It'd be fun. They can shadow me. We can talk about, whatever, and network with different people. So, but I think in general, I think it's probably low hanging fruit in terms of a program that's worth implementing, a mentor program, shadow someone for the day. But I wanted to mention, we talked about just a moment ago how help desk people can be really burnt out. Okay. Think about the security department. Think about the SOC. What is one of the most common roles where people get burnt out pretty quickly, where there's often a lot of turnover? Okay. Often it's the frontline, analysts, the people in the SOC that are staring at panes of glass, and doing that, just waiting for bad things to happen or investigating things. And that can be monotonous. And so look at, honestly, every nook and cranny of your security department and figure out where you're having turnover. And if you launch the employee satisfaction surveys, maybe you can find out why you're having so much turnover. But if you are experiencing turnover, whether it's IT security analysts, for example, maybe that's a way where, after you've been there 2 years, reach out to the person. Hey, happy second anniversary, whatever. Hey, you are now eligible if you would like to participate in something, or if a mentor thing, or you're invited to attend a workshop or attend a introductory webinar to ways that you can expand your career from IT security analyst to other things. Let's figure out your career path. Think about when you were in college, right? You had a guidance counselor, and your guidance counselor helped you figure out potential career paths, and how to write your resume, how to do it. Maybe you have guidance counselors inside your company that are advocates for your personnel to help them, grow their career so that they never want to leave your company because they feel important and valued.
And that's crucial. Like you were saying, with the investment in your continued training, I know some companies don't offer to pay for your training, but they may offer things like additional time off for study, or I've even seen people have their teams. They say, okay, everybody that wants to go get this certification, maybe the SSCP from ISC2, we're going to not necessarily pay for all your training, but we'll pay for a portion of it, but we'll give you time at work to study if you all go through it together, right? Because then you get the benefit of, you get home, you're tired after work and you don't want to study, or you've got, spouse, kids, et cetera. And I think those incentives will also attract talent to those organizations. And I was just talking with another company recently about this, and their brand, I won't name them, but their brand is one that attracts very good, very technical talent, even though they're not paying an information security premium. So think about the other things that might come along, those softer benefits, because people see it as a great name to have on their resume. And that can help, I think, attract talent from not only within your organization who wants to stay, but also, potentially from outside the org as well. Let's see, we had a question about security buzz on LinkedIn. I'll let you take that one offline. Okay. But let's see. Where's another one? What do you think about, there seems to be a lot of issues, and I've seen posts like this on LinkedIn as well, either phantom job offers they're saying, or making companies say that looks like they're hiring and growing, but there's never an actual job there that materializes. We've heard quiet quitting on the employee side, but what about quiet hiring? I've heard rumors of that. Have you seen anything like that, or come across anything about not scams? It's just that they're putting posts up on their job boards for jobs that aren't actually open.
How is that not a scam?
Well, I mean, it's not a scam.
Not a scam like to try to get your credit card number or, or something like that. But, that's pretty bad for a company to do that, because their employees may say, oh, there's a rec. Maybe I can move laterally. I'd like to apply. And then they learn, no, that's just fake. So I think, I'm sorry, I haven't come across that before.
Yeah, I heard some chatter of it at ISC2 Congress last October, and was like, I'm gonna have to look into this. I was wondering if you'd heard anything. What about what's your thought on internship programs? I've seen them used with varying degrees of success. Myself, I've recruited through internships before, through things like the Cyber Patriots program and others. What do you think about that? Because I know a lot of the IC2 certs require paid experience to sit for the exam, and often internships aren't paid, but it seems like a great way to source talent before everybody else is, when they're younger and maybe still in even high school.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And these kids, I mean, they're looking for jobs at retail stores or whatever, and if they're willing to get work for 15 an hour or 20 an hour, pay them 30 an hour or whatever, or 25 an hour or something like that. It's not going to break the bank. This is not going to, but it's a win-win. But I would also recommend, if your company, if you're a company where predominantly you are a work inside the company, at the physical office, if that company is located within driving distance of one or more universities, why not have ask your recruiters, hey, do you have a relationship with these universities? Are you, connected to these guidance counselors for the different schools? And many, if not most of these universities these days have cybersecurity programs. So that's a great way to have talent, especially for those those entry level positions. Like the help desk type position on the IT side, or security analyst positions. There's a lot of grunt positions, and if you start them out as an intern and give them those really low hanging, fruit tasks to do, it can be a win-win. And then now you've got people that are already familiar with your company. When they, then they get their degree and they're looking for their first job out of college, and boom, you already know them. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And if you're a hiring manager, get out there at those universities, start meeting and greeting people that are on that path as well. And I encourage folks to also hit up your local ISC2 chapter. There's a number of resources on the ISC2 website as well. Even in your study groups, for example, I've hired 2 people out of a chapter meeting in a city I had just started in with a brand new job, and I went to my first chapter meeting and said, hey, I've got 2 open positions. If anybody knows anyone that's qualified, send them my way. Sure enough, I got 2 great hires out of that. So nice. I would say also, if you're looking, go to those events as well, and go to where the people are. Go to where they're actually hunting for. What are some of the other things? We talk a bit about compensation in this profession, how it's a little, usually a couple of tiers higher than similar IT roles, but that's not the only reason people come into this. You mentioned things like investing in your employees, and you mentioned also some things like hiring bonuses to attract additional talent. What are some of the other kind of, shall we say, softer things that perhaps go unnoticed that we could use to lure the talent to our organizations if the competition's particularly fierce for a role?
Yeah. So when you're recruiting people outside the security industry or outside the security profession, um, keep in mind of the overall IT universe, there's lots and segments of the IT universe. Security is one of them. Networking, storage, cloud, fintech, legal tech, dot 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 dot. And if you attending this webinar, if you're pretty new to the security industry, or maybe you're not even in the security industry yet, maybe you're thinking about it, go on Bright Talk to the ISC2 channel. You'll find a webinar that Brandon and I did last year called Security Industry 101. It's a crash course on the security industry, like a 1-hour crash course on how big the security industry is, how fast it's growing, what are the different types of technologies, threat actors, dot, dot, dot. It's a really cool webinar, so check out the replay. But the reason why I bring this up is the IT industry, Gartner forecasts every year the growth of the IT industry. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Let's say it's 7% for any given year. The forecasted growth of the IT security industry is usually around 2x. So if IT is 7%, security is going to be around 14% or something along those lines. So in other words, having a security job role doesn't mean that you're not ever going to be laid off. But I can tell you right now, it's one of the last areas where you're going to laid off because it's hard to find talent. There's often a backlog. The industry is growing because AI is certainly helping the good guys, but it's also helping the bad guys. Threats are getting more sophisticated, and organizations can't afford to back off of their security investment. I mean, if you're a CISO and you say no to something, okay, and then you're victimized by an attack, and then you say, oh, then they find out that you said no, that you refused to buy whatever it was. That can be not only a company killer, but it can be a career killer. And I know someone that falls in that category years ago. So I think one of the important things for people to understand outside the security industry is once you're in, the security profession, as long as you love what you do, okay, because that's what's most important.
Bring the energy to it, yeah.
Don't ever leave, because it's just a great place to be. There's tremendous job security in security professions than I would say more so on average than other facets of the IT department or other departments around the company.
I think another avenue goes unlooked. I mean, people are looking at the enterprise to break into security. Look at the vendor space, right? I mean, that's how I got my start on the vendor side in the help desk, helping our customers, right? I mean, you've got sales engineering roles, you've got all kinds of great opportunities on the vendor side as well. And I've seen people carry their careers, never end up in the enterprise, stay there. I've seen people go both directions as well, like yourself. Yeah.
30 years.
You started that. Yeah. So I think that there are some great ways to hunt for talent, shall we say. Really do appreciate you coming on, folks. I do want to say for those of you, and there's been a couple of questions about apprenticeship programs. If you want to see some of the structure of those programs, NIST at nist.gov has some great resources, nice structured apprentice programs, and also links to apprenticeship programs across the United States. So great resource there. Any closing remarks for folks, Steve, as we head out the door on this virtual Wednesday?
Just gratitude. Thank you for attending. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to be connected.
Great seeing you again, Steve. Can't wait to see that newsletter. Take care, my friend, and to you all out there, have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Bye-bye.